Hello, good afternoon. I am so wonderfully grateful to be here today. My name is Erika Rivers, and I'm the Executive Director for Wilderness Inquiry. And I've already seen a few faces, Bob Erickson from my previous life as Director of State Parks and Trails. But I'm just really happy to be here today and be part of this community and tell you a little bit about my new role as Executive Director of Wilderness Inquiry. It's a wonderful organization, so I'm very proud to be here. So Wilderness Inquiry is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're about 46 years old, and our mission is connect people of all ages, backgrounds, abilities, and identities to experience the outdoors through shared outdoor adventures. Wilderness Inquiry began in 1978. It's a 46-year-old nonprofit organization headquartered here in the Twin Cities area, but now working all over the nation and globe. Since 1978, when we started, have served about 500,000 people across the world from all 50 states and about 35 countries. So our mission, really in a nutshell, is to get people who haven't been able to experience the outdoors for a variety of different reasons to do so. We started as a nonprofit organization really working in the disability access area. And in 1977, the Minnesota governor at the time, this is when the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness was being designated, he made a really unfortunate statement. He said that if the Boundary Waters was to be a non-motorized recreation area, that unfortunately, and I quote, the handicapped, elderly, and women would never get to experience it. Well, our founder, Greg Lace, took some exception to that statement and really was very against somebody making public policy based on a disability argument and took it upon himself. He was a 20-something St. John's University student at the time, took 10 people with a variety of different abilities or disabilities into the Boundary Waters for 10 days, and the Star Tribune wrote about it. And happily, that was the last time that particular governor made the argument that the Boundary Waters couldn't be a non-motorized area. 1978, then, Wilderness Inquiry was founded as a 501c3 nonprofit and has been working in the disability access space in the outdoors and to get others who are underrepresented in the outdoors into the outdoors. Those are some of the statistics I just mentioned. We've been headquartered in the Twin Cities metropolitan area ever since, and we do all of our work through partnership with local entities, school districts. We work with the city of Bloomington and the independent school district here. We work with national organizations as well as international organizations to do our work. Everything we do is through partnership. These are our core values and brand promise. We have 4 core values. One is paddling together. We do everything in an inclusive manner. We're not an outdoor outfitter where we cater to people and then we make all their meals and they, fix their tent and all that kind of stuff. We are very participatory in our the way we do things. So that's what we say, paddling together as a value. Finding a way when we're dealing with people with all kinds of different abilities. Sometimes you have to get a little creative to figure out how to get them across a portage, for example, in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, which we do. We just have a very find a way, make it happen kind of attitude. Seeking the exceptional. We, of course, want to be safe as a fundamental, but we also want to be always on the cutting edge of exploration of education-based curriculum that we bring to our programming, whether it's a day program or an extended outdoor adventure. And then nurturing inclusion. As you can tell from what I've told you about our founding and our mission, we are all about helping everybody be part of the outdoors and experience the health and wellness benefits of being outside. We serve a lot of people every year. Last year, we served more than 32,000 people. We serve them from a variety of different backgrounds. About 80% of the folks we serve are youth or young adults. Most folks that we serve, about 61%, are experiencing some sort of financial inequity. 57% are girls and women. 48%, almost half, identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And about 7%, that is the total number of people with disabilities, although we know that's underrepresented in school districts that we serve. On our extended trips, we serve about 39% of our participants have some sort of disability, identified disability. This is how we fund our work. I always get this question. We have a three-legged stool. That big orange piece of the pie down there is government grants. We receive funding from Minnesota's Legacy Amendment, that actually, interestingly, in the Arts and Heritage, not in Parks and Trails, part of that account. And we also have a fairly sizable grant from the LCCMR, which is those lottery dollars. At the national level, we have funding from the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior through National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, as well as the U.S. Forest Service. So that's that orange piece of pie. It's about 41% of our revenue this year. The blue pieces of pie are earned revenue. So those are fee-for-service programs that we do. And people pay as they can for to go on trips with us. And then anything that would be considered sort of a profit in the for-profit world gets pumped back into the organization to cover administrative and fixed costs with all of our programming. So about close to 30% this year of our revenue comes from earned revenue. And then the final in the green there is our contributed revenue, about 28% this year. And those are foundations, individual donors, and sponsors that provide fiscal resources for us to do our work. I mentioned that we do a variety of programs. We call this our pyramid of outdoor engagement. Wilderness Inquiry is a unique organization in that they have never really believed in one-and-done programming. They understand that to get people passionate about connecting with one another and getting passionate about being in the outdoors, you have to provide multiple experiences, not just one and done. And so at the base of the pyramid are our day and multi-day programs, and those are really centered around building community and confidence, exposure to the natural world, and some introductory sort of problem assessment, I would say, of environmental stewardship. Those are our day programs that happen, no overnight visit there, or our multi-day programs, which I'll tell you about in a minute. We serve the same population multiple days but no overnight. In the middle of our pyramid of engagement is a little bit more in-depth exposure. These are near nature and extended adventures. The near nature are usually 1 to 2 hours from home, and 1 or 2 nights overnight. And here we're teaching basic skills. We're teaching, trying to get people to find a sense of accomplishment. And then when we talk about that inclusion, really trying to find connection and belonging and group belonging with those experiences. And then our extended adventures can be anywhere from 3 to 15 days. Those happen close to home in the Boundary Waters, Voyageurs National Park, the Apostle Islands, or they can happen anywhere else across the nation and world. We go to New Zealand and we go to Yellowstone National Park, and I'll cover some of those other places as well. And then at the top of the pyramid, we call it our leadership, or our TLC, leadership and career training leadership and career pathways. And there we're really trying to teach resilience in the outdoors, helping with outdoor skills development, as well as network building. Canoemobile is probably our most noteworthy of the programs that we offer. This is at the base of our pyramid. About 80% of our students that experience canoemobile it's one of their first times floating on the water. You'll find that many kids these days can be traveling to and from school over the Mississippi River, but they have never floated on it and they've never touched it. And so we provide experiences in our 10-person canoes. We call them our floating classrooms, to bring kids out onto the water to have those first experiences connecting to nature near their neighborhood. Canoemobile, we do a lot of work here in the state of Minnesota, but we also go all across the world. On Saturday morning, I sent a canoemobile rig out. This is a van, a 15-passenger van, 7 of these large 24-foot canoes, and 7 outdoor leaders out onto the road going to northern Indiana to work in a partnership that we have there. So those students those outdoor leaders travel all across the country. We'll have 7 rigs out, 2 in Minnesota and 5 across the eastern part of the United States here this fall, delivering those same kind of outdoor classroom experiences on local waterways within communities across the nation. As I said, a lot of young people, these are the first experiences that they have being in floating on water. A lot of them will tell you, I can't go in the canoe because I don't know how to swim. To which our outdoor leaders usually reply, well, you don't need to you're not going to go swimming today, you're going canoeing instead. So this little guy here was on the Anacostia River outside Washington, D.C., having his first experience on the water. The other thing we're doing on the multi-day programming is outdoor credit recovery. This is a fairly innovative program we started with Minneapolis Public Schools about a decade ago and are now working with St. Paul Public Schools on this. And these are for young people who have, for a variety of different reasons, missing out on some credits in order to graduate. And where they haven't been successful in a classroom, sometimes if you take them out of the classroom setting and put them in a little different environment with a licensed teacher, they can recover some of those credits and focus in a different way. And so that's what outdoor credit recovery is. In these particular pictures here, St. Paul Public School youth are actually earning credits in English language and literature. And they do this, like I said, with a licensed teacher. The other thing that's happening with the outdoor credit recovery is because it is a team building experience outdoors, they're gaining a lot of social emotional learning skills that they're not finding necessarily in the classroom. They're working together to paddle the boat, they're solving science problems out in the natural world, they're creating constructive arguments about things like urbanization and using those as the fodder for those English language and literature type assignments. So the other thing that's really important about the Canoe Mobile program, the Outdoor Credit Recovery Program in particular is this. The middle picture right here is the near peer engagement. The gentleman in the red shirt there in the middle was actually a participant in the Minneapolis Public Schools Credit Recovery Program about 10 years ago and is now coming back as an outdoor leader. And what this really does is break down some of those barriers. It breaks down some of the reluctance to be outdoors and to provide those kind of close near-peer engagements that help those students understand that they can succeed in their pursuit of recovering those credits. It's a program we're really fairly excited about. Outdoor credit recovery in particular, I mentioned we work with a variety of partners to make this kind of work happen. Some of them are for-profit companies. Nature Valley has been a big supporter of it out on the West Coast, Toad & Co., as well as a lot of federal agencies as well. Near nature and extended overnight, I mentioned a little bit about those. We work all over the state and country, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of a eye candy of all the fun places we go. Apostle Islands National Lakeshore, we have a base camp up there. It is our most accessible location. It's a place that we can take people who use wheelchairs. It's a place that we have some controlled environments for people with neurodiverse backgrounds, as well as people who are either hearing or sight impaired as well. Beartooth Mountains out near Yellowstone, wonderful place to go hiking. We brought Harding High School students in Earth Club out there this year. Belize Tyke Hall. Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, that's where we started all this work many, many years ago. Someplace that we go quite frequently even today. Glacier National Park. This particular group is one of military families. Some of the work that we're doing with the Department of Defense and the Defense Health Agency. Hawaii's Big Island. This is a group of first-time students we took to Hawaii's Big Island to explore volcanoes a couple of years ago. Iceland, lots of exciting things happening there these days. New Zealand, the Superior Hiking Trail, wonderful place to bring folks for near nature or close to home experiences. Tanzania, Yellowstone National Park. And then just briefly about our training, leadership, and career pathways. We've been working quite a bit in most recent years with a fellowship program. This is really in recognition that largely in the outdoor recreation field, there's not a lot of diversity in the people who are employed in that. area. So our fellowship program is very focused on bringing people who are historically and currently underrepresented in the outdoors into a career pathway so that they can become outdoor leaders and work in this field. So our fellowship program has been focused on that. This year we added ASL, American Sign Language, another 4 interpreters, people who are getting credentialing in ASL interpretation to learn how to interpret in the outdoors. So that was a really exciting new development this year as well. The other really exciting thing, and the reason I'm standing here today, is I'm coming home. I mentioned to Eric a little earlier ago that I'm a product of Bloomington Public Schools, and we're bringing wilderness inquiry to the city of Bloomington. We just purchased this property at 930 East 80th Street, and our headquarters will be here effective November 1st of this year. We're undergoing a huge renovation of the property right now so that we can fit all of our equipment and gear and warehouse there, and so we're just really excited to be part of this community. I mentioned that Military Families Outdoors. We received about $1.7 million from the Department of Defense, Defense Health Agency, to help create a sense of belonging with military families across the nation. And so that's about a 30% increase in our business for the coming years. And so we're just bursting at the seams and growing, but really excited to be working with this population. Some might ask, how does that work? Unfortunately, military families do experience disability at a higher rate than our background population, not just the service members, but also family members connected with military families. So that's a sweet spot of how we work or where we work. And military families tend to be more diverse than the background population. And so they really fit the demographics of folks that we really want to help experience those health and wellness benefits of the outdoors. So it's been a really exciting new program for us. And then the other part is deepening our impact. I mentioned that we work all across the nation with our Canoe Mobile program, and the military families work in particular has really been, there's really been a focus on deepening that impact with those near nature and extended overnight adventures so that military families can feel that sense of belonging in the outdoors.
Our mission is really to connect people with one another and the natural world. It's really important for us to find these opportunities to support folks who experience some of the barriers to getting outdoors. We are committed to having staff members who represent these communities and identify with these communities. And so it does take an investment and a commitment, which we're happy to do. A lot of them have never floated on a river or a lake before, and so it's just a wonderful experience to provide those first-time opportunities for folks to do that. do this kind of work without support from local communities. And there's been a long and strong support from the Smith McCarthy Fund to really lift up and provide these opportunities for people who are experiencing deafness and hard of hearing.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
And maybe if you can repeat the question. Sure. But the question is, how do people reach out to you or get scheduled or know about you and find you?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, how do people find out about Wilderness Inquiry and schedule? We do both public trips as well as contract trips. So a lot of what we do within the education space in particular is through word of mouth. And that's actually true with our extended programs as well. We really deliver our programs for everybody. Our mission has never been to provide separate special trips for special people. We try to provide integrated trips with just the general community. So like that trip that I mentioned, we said that we went to New Zealand. For example, we brought an individual on both of the last 2 trips to New Zealand that have that live with blindness. Everybody else on the trip was just wanted to go to New Zealand, and so it is a very participatory experience. So, yes.
Arlise works for an organization in San Diego that I think has a similar mission, and I'm wondering if you are either part of a larger organization that deals with other states' populations, or have relationships so that if you want to kind of combine with a trip with somebody else, you can kind of do joint venture type things?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we work with, paraphrasing a little bit, but different organizations in different states, and is there a kind of a national network that connects people that are doing work in this space? We do partner very extensively with organizations that are either youth-serving organizations, disability advocacy organizations throughout the country. So like in the state of California, we're not working in San Diego right now. We have in the past. We're currently working in the Bay Area. In that area, we're working with sponsorship from Toad & Co., which is a clothing company that their foundation likes to support organizations that serve people with disabilities. And so their linkages in the local communities then are how we connect with local communities. And as I said, we're really committed to partnering and providing warm handoffs between what we do with our Canoe Mobile or extended programs and entities in local communities that can continue folks' exploration of deeper levels of engagement in the outdoors. So yes, everything we do is with partnership. Yeah.
This is more of a comment. Most people don't realize that Erika headed the Parks and Trail Division of the DNR, which means that all the state parks in Minnesota, all the trails, all those things came under her leadership. And I think you were the first female in your role.
I was.
And she did a fantastic job. Dwayne's wife, Kelly, was on the Parks and Trails board with me, and we worked very closely with Erika and others. But I mean, it's a huge job, and we were very sorry to see her leave her position. She was worked very closely with us, but happy to see you in a new position.
Thank you so much, Bob. And it was, Bob was just making the comment about my previous role as director of Minnesota State Parks and Trails, which is an enormously gratifying job that I was really sorry to leave as well. But really, I'm a conservation biologist by training. And the reason I got into parks and trails and outdoor recreation is I started to understand through that conservation work that people don't conserve what they don't know and care about. And the only way people care about things is if they get connected to them. So in that role, working as director of Minnesota State Parks and Trails, I worked very closely with Wilderness Inquiry as a partner in that role. And so when the executive director, the founder, Greg Leiss, retired, they asked me if I would consider moving to the nonprofit sector. And because I'm so passionate as a conservation biologist in connecting people to the outdoors, it made a ton of sense to make that change. Plus, I did the thing everybody else did, which was, it was COVID, and I just turned 50, and the midlife thing, and all that stuff. And so here I am, and it has really just been incredibly gratifying, and an incredible, great, passionate team of people that work for Wilderness Inquiry, and it's wonderful to be part of, even as I miss my time at and experiences in Parks and Trails.
The outdoor and arts amendment is up for renewal this year. What happens to you if it does not pass?
Great question. So it's the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. So there are two funding sources. One is that little bit of tax dollars, which is your arts and culture, and then this one is the one that comes from lottery funds. Yep. So there are two different ones. So the one that's up for renewal this year is the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, which is decided by the Legislative Citizens Commission on Natural Resources, Minnesota Resources. So that trust fund has actually grown to be quite substantial, and that trust fund is still going to be there even if the amendment doesn't pass. That said, that amendment has done incredibly great things. Bob could probably tell you hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres of land has been preserved. A lot of really important scientific research has been done using those funds. A ton of environmental education work has been supported through that fund. So there is an amendment on the ballot this fall, and I think you can probably know where I would recommend you vote. The fund will go on regardless, but it will not grow at the rate that it would if this is renewed. So it's been a very important source of funding for environment and natural resources, and so there's a big effort to vote yes on that amendment.
But it's also been a great source of funding for the arts.
That's a different fund.
That's a different
It's a legacy.
That's the legacy.
That's what.
And that's also coming up in a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned in passing kids that don't know how to swim. Do you partner with organizations as you do your work and set up these programs to focus on swimming lessons for all kids? There's so many kids nowadays that just have never had the opportunity to even try to learn how to swim.
Mm-hmm. So the comment in question is about the very concerning trend that a lot of young people are not learning how to swim at a young age. And do we partner with groups that support swimming lessons? We don't directly work with those, but we are supported by very similar foundations and nonprofit organizations that do fund those efforts. In particular, Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies has been very instrumental in working in community to try to help get more kids to learn how to swim at a younger age. And we also receive funding through Margaret A. Cargill Foundation. But no, we don't work directly with swimming lessons.
What's the connection, this is maybe off course a little bit, but between the Minnesota State Parks and the Minnesota State Forests?
Yeah. So the question is, what's the difference and connection between Minnesota State Forests and Minnesota State Parks? They both are administered through the Department of Natural Resources. The forests are administered primarily for timber harvest and other natural resource economies. And so they're managed by the Department of the Division of Forestry to do that work. Minnesota State Parks is another division that sits within the Department of Natural Resources. That division is the Division of Parks and Trails, but also does all the public water access sites in the state, manages those as well. So both fit within the Department of Natural Resources, but separate divisions within them. That said, all of the forest campgrounds that are across the state of Minnesota are actually managed by the Division of Parks and Trails, as are all the ATV and snowmobile trails in state forests.
Then what about the trails that are in the state forests?
Depends on the question is what about the trails in state forests? It depends on which trails you're talking about. If they're ATV trails or snowmobile trails, they're managed by the Division of Parks and Trails. If they're hunter walking trails, they're administered by the Division of Fish and Wildlife. I know, yeah. They have it all figured out, I promise.
I was wondering, you had to focus on programs to assist hearing impaired youth. With the increasing diagnoses of kids on the autism spectrum, do you have programs kind of geared to the neurodiverse young population? Oh,
a question near and dear to my heart. So the question is about neurodiverse, or sometimes also referred to people on the autism spectrum. Yes, we do quite a bit of training on working with youth who are neurodiverse. We also offer affinity group travel with families that are experiencing neurodiversity in their family. So in those programs, like especially we like to take them up to Apostle Islands National Lakeshore, where we have lots of ability to provide lots of different supports for people experiencing neurodiversity. We have several outdoor leaders on our staff who experience neurodiversity, and we try to staff at least one of the outdoor leaders on each of those trips with one individual that has diagnosed or is experiencing neurodiversity or identifies that way. It's an area, I'm sure, just based on the question, of a lot of expanding interest, a lot of need and support. And so we're continually training and finding new ways to help support that. Another one that we do that's a little closer to home, just for 1 or 2 overnights, is to do trips on the Namakagon or St. Croix rivers, a little bit closer to home in case we need to make a change and maybe somebody doesn't want to stay as long. So thanks for that question.
Maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay, yes.
Could you talk a little bit about how you relate to international organizations? What do they need? And to some degree, why? Because there's a lot of difference between national and international.
So the question is a little bit about how do we fit into that international travel, and how do we work with international organizations? That's a really great question. When people experience a disability, if you go out on the internet and search for a trip, oftentimes you'll make that phone call or have that email outreach to the organization, being an outfitter, and they'll say, I happen to use a wheelchair, or I am blind. And they will say, sorry, we can't really support that. Wilderness Inquiry's been in this space supporting people who have disabilities for a very long time. We've developed ways to help people experience the outdoors, even in a pretty wilderness setting, to support the needs of those individuals on the trip. So the reason why international trips, why do we go to Costa Rica, why do we go to New Zealand, why do we go to Tanzania, is because we're one of the few people operating in that space to help support folks so everybody can enjoy the outdoors. When it comes to the international travel, we're increasingly using partnerships with local guide organizations so that you have that local knowledge of the culture, of the natural resources, of the special species that are in that place. So for example, on our New Zealand trip, we work with an outfitter that is in New Zealand. However, that outfitter isn't experienced in supporting people with disabilities. So that's where our leaders come in, our trip assistants come in, and they help provide that really participatory experience on that international trip, and also provide the supports for that person so that they can enjoy the trip, being well supported to address the challenges of their disability. That's kind of the why behind it. Anything else? Yes. Did you change your name to Rivers? I was thinking about my last name, which is a very frequent question. I am married to a Richfield alumni whose last name is Rivers. And yes, it's just been fortuitous.
When I was 17, I grew up in Milwaukee, and when I was 17, I was one of 2 students at my very small high school to go to conservation camp. And that made a very big impression on me for the rest of my life.
Yes.
I'm very careful about the environment, and long story, but
Yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Thank you.